Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. I have no idea if I didn't announce this, so perhaps someone can pop a message up on Social Galactic or something. But I thought it was a good idea to address some of the stuff that is clearly going on with regards to Baen Books and with regards to Castalia, although some of you may not realize that yet. So obviously we're living in a time of significant and totally unnecessary difficulty. It's really remarkable how all of these governments and all of these bureaucrats and all of these people who are supposedly so concerned about economic growth and the well-being of the community and saving the world and all this other stuff are actively interfering with the ability of people to simply do business and to go about helping people work, providing goods, providing services, etc., etc. It's really astonishing that so few people seem to understand that our well-being is dependent upon people agreeing to put their differences aside and just doing business with one another. Can you imagine if farmers suddenly decided that they weren't going to sell any food to people who were too woke for them? Because that's the equivalent. And frankly, that's probably what is going to have to happen before things return to any semblance of normalcy. You know, the core problem is that most of these SJWs simply don't have any understanding of how fragile society functionally is. You know, to them, it just exists. SJW mentality is something that almost requires a total failure of the understanding of where things come from, how society works. And so it's not an accident that it is fundamentally led by people who are essentially rootless, both on the philosophical and conceptual levels, you know, the academics, the we won't call them philosophers, but you know, you look at that, and then you look at on the low level, the wealthy children of liberals, the permanent college students who have no ability to find a job, even though they have master's degrees. It's you know, totally rootless, totally useless people. And that's why they're doing this, because they're attempting to find meaning. They're attempting to find purpose. Everybody needs to have meaning in their lives. Everybody needs to have purpose in their lives. But these people are essentially lotus eaters. And they're not pretty enough to be successfully hedonistic. They're not intelligent enough to define their own purposes in lives. They're not Christian enough to find any fundamental meaning in life. And so this is the substitute for them. You know, they attempt to build themselves up by destroying society. they believe that society will remain livable, when the reality is they won't even have flush toilets. You know, that's what we're fighting for. The ability to live not in filth. And so when you look at the situation, you realize why it's so pointless, why it's so irrelevant to even try to negotiate with these people, to try to get along with these people. It's not possible. And the sooner that you realize it, the better. And I bring this up because there's currently an SJW campaign that's going against Baen Books, and it's going against Castalia. Now, you probably haven't noticed it with regards to Castalia because we're not paying much attention to it. We have been under some form of assault for the entirety of our existence since 2014. So I think we started in March 2014. So it's been 7 years of more or less constant attack. So of course, everything that we do is structured in a anti-fragile fashion. We're not dependent on any one market. We're not dependent on any one outlet. Of all the publishers out there, we are probably the least dependent upon Amazon, which is good because Amazon has been destroying the ebook market that it created for the past 3 years. We've been through that before, but it's it's the reality. And so that's why we have multiple areas of publishing. We have multiple areas of production. There's no one fundamental person who is a breakpoint. I think the production people could quite reasonably argue that I am the least important of all in terms of actually getting stuff done, which is good. So Baen Books, first of all, those of you who can remember the days of the sad puppies and the rabid puppies, a lot of the sad puppy authors were Baen Books authors. Larry Correa being the originator and the original sad puppy. And then, you had Sarah Hoyt and Brad and Tom and a bunch of other folks. Generally good people, generally right of center, good writers, successful writers, some more than others, Larry more than everybody. But the thing is that one thing that their supporters never really understood about them is that the sad puppies, the Baen Books people, they never wanted conflict. They never wanted to fight. They just wanted to write. They just wanted to sell books. They're like the Gamergaters who just wanted to play games. But they're not gamers. I'm a gamer. I'm an original Gamergater, and I'm proud of that. I mean, obviously that's that's used as more a curse word than an insult by the media, but for me, that's one of the things that I really enjoy being able to point out and claim. It wasn't intentional. I had no idea that it was going to turn into as significant a thing as it did. And one of these days, hopefully, somebody will set the record straight. I'm sure someone has. I mean, there's plenty of people that were tracking stuff quite well. But the point is that Gamergaters were very different, and the reason that the name Gamergate is still feared by the left is because it was the first time that anyone actually stood up to the SJWs and made them retreat. And that's, that inspired all kinds of people who maybe didn't even pay any attention to games at all. There was even a very serious article in some major mainstream media institution that tried to blame Trump's presidency on Gamergate. I think that is more than a little excessive, but there's no question that Gamergate fundamentally changed the way that people thought about the media. Fundamentally changed the way that people felt about remaining on the sidelines. Now that's one of the reasons why Castalia has been as successful as it's been, that Unauthorized has been as successful as it's been, because we never, ever trust anything or anyone that has anything to do with the mainstream. We've learned that. And on the very few occasions where we haven't stuck religiously to that principle, we've learned that we should have. Not necessarily because of conflict or enemy action, but just because normal people, regular people, don't have the ability to accept the reality of the situation that we're in. They don't have the ability to realize that conflict is now intrinsic to our way of life. Understand that and accept that. Conflict is now intrinsic to your way of life if you want to survive and thrive. You cannot assume that anyone, much less anybody who is, well, he's a liberal, but he's a good guy. He voted for Biden, but he's a good guy. They're not. You have to assume until absolutely proven otherwise that people who are not committed to truth, who are not committed to Jesus Christ, and who are not fully understanding that this is a fallen world and that evil is active, cannot be trusted, because they will fail. They will let you down. They will be surprised by the fact that they got attacked. For me, it's unfathomable that Bain wasn't prepared for something like this. Larry was a bit, I'm pretty sure it was more than a bit, angry and offended by the fact that a number of people were dubious about Bain's ability to continue without completely cucking. And they looked at Bain closing its bar as a sign of weakness, as a sign, not just a sign, but a sign of surrender. Now, I didn't quite take it that way. Most people who were defending Bain and defending Tony Weisskopf's decision to take the bear down were saying, it's the bar down, was saying it's just a tactical retreat. We don't want to get banned by, we don't want to get banned the way that Parler did, so we took it down, etc., etc. Well, here's the problem. Number one, if an amenable authority wants to get rid of you, if they think that they can virtue signal by getting rid of you, they will do so, and your actions don't matter. In fact, doing what Bain did was actually counterproductive because it signaled two things. Number one, and more importantly, it signaled weakness. It signaled that they probably don't have either the will or the wherewithal to fight. Every SJW Converge company that comes after me, that comes after Castalia, that comes after anything that is the Men of the West, anything in that greater community of the Dread Ilk, the Ilk, especially the VFM, every single company knows that they are going to be in for a long and nasty fight. You know, I mean, do you really think that Patreon is happy that they deplatformed Owen Benjamin and that, what is it now? October, November, December, January. It's been nearly a year and a half, and they are still caught up in massive arbitration. And they lost a legal case. And they've changed their terms of use 5 times. And they've been driven completely out of arbitration, and now they're vulnerable to class action litigation. They always were, but nobody knew it. Because of the way that the terms were worded. So, and this is a company that willfully, blithely violates the EU's general data protection regulations, completely pays no attention to user data privacy and all that sort of thing. And I mean, none of our community needs to do anything. They're going to do something stupid. They're going to do something wrong. And someone somewhere is going to hold them accountable. Because they advertise their nonsense to far too broad an audience, while pissing off literally tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of their own user base. And so, you know, that is literally everybody. Doesn't matter if it's PayPal, doesn't matter if it's Google, YouTube. You know, they know that they're in for it. And, you know, these little tests are going to happen. You know, we've been tested by Amazon. We were tested by Google. Now YouTube. You know, we're responding to that. Of course we are. Always. But what Bain did is that they signified that they would back down. Now, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it wasn't intentional, right? But that doesn't matter. When Pompey retreated from Rome, he fully intended that he was going to come back to Rome as soon as he had his legions together and take it back. But he wasn't able to. And so when you look, I understand that, you know, I'm not criticizing their intentions. I'm criticizing the efficacy of their decisions, because in addition to signaling that they're not going to fight, in addition to signaling weakness, which just encourages more people to pile on, encourage them to think, oh, we found a soft target, we're good to go. In addition to that, you've got the problem of demonstrating that, you know, you're not prepared. They know this now. And so that's my concern. I mean, I understand, okay, we were going to get ready, we didn't have time, et cetera, but by taking something like that down, you're essentially pleading guilty to the charge. It would have been much better, in my opinion, to simply block off public access to it and then arrange to let your friends and allies in. That's why Social Galactic is probably never going to be completely open. It may never even be partially open. We're quite pleased with how it's working. Gab has ambitions of being the big open social media network. That's fine. That's great. I hope they're successful. It's not what we want. It's not what we want to do. We only want people in our community who want to be there. And if you're not willing to build your community, if you're not willing to pay $5 a month to get, hundreds of hours of videos and access to the community and all this sort of thing, then frankly, we don't have any use for you. We literally don't want your support. Apple is one of the most profitable companies in the world with a walled garden. You don't need to be open to the world in order to be successful. I would argue that in today's world, in today's age of conflict, that's incredibly foolish. Because all you're going to do is open yourself to attack. Open yourself to infiltrators. Open yourself to people who want to subvert what you're doing. Open yourself to people that want to destroy your organization. And this is, of course, if you've read SJW's Always Lie, if you've read SJW's Always Double Down, if you've read Corporate Cancer, then you know that this is all intentional. This is all going to happen. And so, Taryn says, what support? If one won't throw $5 in the pool, what are we expecting? Precisely. And again, you have to have skin in the game to matter. N.N. Taleb is one of the smartest guys out there writing. I don't agree with him on everything, but I have tremendous respect for his opinion and for his ability to analyze things and his ability in particular to cut to the chase in presenting a succinct and significant argument. And when he says skin in the game is the only thing that matters, he is utilizing rhetoric that is based upon the truth. If you don't have skin in the game, then your opinion doesn't matter, your presence isn't helpful, and you have no commitment to the community. It's always much better to stand with 200 people that you know are going to stand than 20,000 that you suspect might run. I mentioned this in the not sure I mentioned it, but in the HBO series Rome, there's rather an amusing scene after the defeat of Pompeius Magnus, and one of Caesar's centurions is talking to him. And what's kind of amusing about it is that it's a dangerous moment. Pompey knows that this centurion can either kill him and his family or arrest them and drag them back to Rome. But the one thing that the centurion who wasn't at the battle wants to know is, how did you lose? Caesar's army was starving. They were outnumbered 3-1. They were up against a general who was believed to be Caesar's equal, and not without reason. They didn't give him the name Pompeius Magnus because he was a mediocre general. He was Pompey the Great. And yet, somehow, this great general manages to lose a life or death battle with his former son-in-law and now enemy, and he didn't even get outgeneraled. It was kind of interesting. Well, he did get outgeneraled in that he shouldn't have attacked in the first place, but he explains to the centurion, and this is what's was entertaining. It was very true to the male psychology. Here you've got two guys who are on opposing sides, theoretically enemies. Quite possibly, one of them knows his life is in the other one's hands. They get so into the discussion of the battle that they just completely relax and just start talking about it man to man, soldier to soldier. And he says, well, they were up against the sea here, and our lines were arrayed here, and I had my cavalry reserve here, and I sent the cavalry around to the left, which I think you'll agree was a proper move. And the centurion says, oh, absolutely. And the cavalry hit a small group of reserves, were somehow driven off. Then the Caesar's cavalry, much smaller in number, counterattacked, hit the left flank. The left flank wasn't expecting to be attacked, so they panicked and ran, which panicked the entire army, which ran. You know, the 200 men that Caesar had who stood firm essentially won the battle against, probably 15,000 men, maybe more, because they stood. And that's the thing that I think that the Bane community, the moderates, the sad puppies, whatever, they like to talk big. They love to say, well, the left sure isn't gonna like it when our side gets tired of it. And they even like to sometimes drop us as potential threats. Don't forget, that won't stop them from condemning you as being an awful, terrible person who should be disemployed and with whom no one of good will should ever have any connection, right? But you need to have standing. One thing that you can do if you're already an authorized subscriber, or even if you're not, $1. If you subscribe to Castelia on Patreon for $1 a month, you'll have standing if they dare to make a move. Whether they will, whether they won't, I don't know. Let's just say it's really hard to correctly anticipate what stupid and uninformed people are going to do. I mean, it's like trying to anticipate, an answer to a math problem. Not just a math problem, but like some sort of math problem that involves reading from somebody who can't read. I mean, not only do you not know what the answer is going to be wrong, you just have absolutely no idea how completely wrong it's going to be. And so, but all you can do is prepare for the possibility of the coming conflict. That's what we do. That's what we've done. And I'm very appreciative that there are so many people, so many unauthorized, so many dread ilk, obviously above all the VFM. I'm very appreciative of the way that you're willing to stand up for the good, the true, and the beautiful. It's not about me. It's not about, you know, the men of the West. It's not about the legend Chuck Dixon. We're literally all in it together. And that's another thing that the moderates, the Bain folks, the sad puppies don't understand. The enemy is going to come after all of us. Every single one. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter whether you're important or not. Doesn't matter whether you're famous or not. It's always funny to me when people think, well, I mean, YouTube couldn't possibly, deplatform this person. I mean, he's got 300,000 subscribers. So what? It's not about that. Frosty the Bear says, you didn't mention the Bears. I'm offended. Oh, don't be. You know I love the Bears. I'm very appreciative of the Bears. I understand sometimes the Dread Ilk can be a little harsh on you. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Wolves and bears don't always get along, but please be aware that they recognize your importance, and whether they particularly like you guys being around all the time, they respect your enthusiasm, and they really respect your courage after seeing the way that the 72 stood firm, didn't flinch, and held the line repeatedly. Not just once, not just twice, but repeatedly. And so Owen knows that I do occasionally bitch about you. It's actually, it'll be much funnier if he tells it, but I think of all the things that I do that amuses Owen, it's quite possibly when I'm irritated about the Bears. So anyhow, but and that's something to keep in mind too. Look, I understand very well that our customer service is so bad that to call it poor would be a step forward. I think we're like 2 steps above catastrophic, right? But there's a reason for that. I mean, what sort of customer service would you expect from some sort of convenience store in Beirut that's literally under siege? Okay, we're working on it. We're doing what we can, but when we can't use a lot of the tools and services that a normal company in our situation would. And that's not an excuse. That's just the simple reason. People say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And there's very good reasons almost all the time. So I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just explaining that I understand the frustration. All I can say is, look, just bear with us. It's going to work. It's all going to work in time. It's not necessarily going to work soon, but when it is delivered, when it gets there, when it works, it's going to be worth it. I don't even have a copy of the Divine Comedy yet. You can see above my head there's Awake in the Nightland, there's the Missionaries, there's the Meditations. I don't have Plutarch, 1 or 2. I don't have the Divine Comedy. So I'm right there with you in that sense. And so, so anyhow, we just don't worry about it very much at the moment because it's not a priority. We will get there. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a comic, a book, access to Social Galactic, whatever. We'll get there eventually. Sooner or later, you'll get there. But it's there's a reason for these things because the core team can only do so much at any one time, and sometimes things don't work. It would probably amuse you if you understood how much stuff gets done by so few people. Why? Because for us, it's more important to have a very reliable, trustworthy core than to just try to hire out. Dusnello says he loved my Proud to be a Boomer song. I'm glad. I actually changed the lyrics a bit. I don't know if you noticed that, but I realized that when I saw Owen singing it, I realized that the last 3 lines of the chorus were not flowing properly. And so, and also in the original song, there's this really good hard-hitting point where it says, and I'll gladly stand up next to you. I don't even remember what the next words are, but so I wanted something that would be similar. So I changed it to I'll gladly stand up, lecture you, and tell you about my youth, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love myself. God knows that it's the truth. So and it's nice because the original song has that chorus, God bless the USA. And so God knows that it's the truth flows much more similar. And defend her still today. See, the problem is, and defend her still today would be good, but her youth doesn't quite work, so it has to be and defend it. It doesn't quite flow. You see what I mean? No, I'm not an excellent lyricist. At this point, I think I'm a competent one. I was actually just thinking about it today. In fact, I was in the car and I was marveling again what a phenomenal lyricist in terms of flow and only flow that George Michael was just phenomenal. Because it's interesting. Prince, I happened to hear it When Doves Cry right after listening to Faith by George Michael. And it was interesting how Prince did an unusually good job for him on When Doves Cry. But frequently, Prince would force it a little bit. Prince was a better musician, obviously, and his lyrics were much more interesting, much more varied. But usually he didn't make them flow quite as perfectly. They could often, Raspberry Beret, the verses they flow pretty nicely. But one thing I noticed about Prince songs is that usually the first verse flows much better than the second one, which is kind of interesting because you would think that the second one would tend to flow more easily because you can just follow the lead of the first. But anyhow, these are the things I think about when I'm driving in the car. So, But oh, thank you. UUU99 says next to you, lecture you is perfect. Yeah, it does work. It does work really really nicely that way, especially when it's right after da 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 da. It's so important to get those rhythms correct, and that's the big mistake that a lot of lyricists make. It's a mistake that I made quite often in Psychosonic, was being too focused on the rhyming and the syllables and less focused on the scanning. So but it just makes it a more interesting challenge, and so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, I've been working on some actual original stuff recently, which I can tell you right now. Not only are you going to like, it will. If the rest of the stuff lives up to the core, it's going to amaze you. But and it'll be fun to see the reactions and stuff when that happens. But anyhow, it's neither here nor there. But yeah, the proud to be a boomer, my vaccination. I think one of these times we're going to have to actually like get the music together so that Owen can record it. Anyhow, that's all I've got for tonight. So if you're interested and you happen to have a Patreon account, definitely subscribe even at the $1 level. And if you are already a Castelli subscriber, it's a good idea, if you're at the $1 or $3 level, to switch your subscription. I'm not going to go into detail, but the point is it's important to have standing starting today. And so if you were already subscribing, then you wouldn't necessarily have standing if it's before the 1st of next month. But if you make the change today, then you'll have that standing. So, conflict is the air we breathe. It's the water in which we swim. We have to be prepared for it and ready to cheerfully engage in it at any time. So, the trick is learning to love it without getting addicted to it. So, in any event, thanks very much. Have a good evening. This will be up on Unauthorized either later tonight or tomorrow, and I will look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, this is the Darkstream. I'm VOX'S Day.